This week's Parsha, after reading about the 10 generations from Adam to Noach, we finally focus on Noach. We read at the end of Parshat Bereshit that humanity had descended to a point where God regretted having created mankind. But there was a silver lining. There was someone who was inspiring. There was someone who brought hope. Noach got his name. The end of Perek Hey, we're told, as opposed to the other names, we're not given the reason for it, that they called him Noach because they hoped that Zeh yenachamenu mimaasenu umeyitzvon yadenu min ha'adama asher era Hashem. The land had become cursed from the time of Adam Rishon through the ensuing generations, and there was hope that now Noach could bring a turning point, could bring minucha. But of course, as we know, this did not happen. Noach was unable to turn the tide, no pun intended, of the generation, and the whole generation was destroyed. In fact, Yitzchak Levi Mibardishev explains that Noach was punished for not having realized the potential he had, not just to save himself, but to save the world. And this is, of course, the difference between Noach, who was a great individual, a tzaddik, and Avraham, and later Avot, and leaders of the Jewish people, who began and continued the heritage of a people by being people who impacted others. And as we know, this is at the very heart of what it means to be an ideal human being. We read in Parshat Bereshit about the beautiful, great, good world that God had created. After every day we're told, Vayar Elokim ki tov. There's one thing that isn't described as good, and that's Adam. And as we're told in Perek Bet, Lo tov heyota Adam. Man has the potential to be not good. And the pasuk continues, Lo tov heyota Adam livado. When man is alone, when man cares only about himself, when man is not engaged with other people, there's a problem with who he is. And that's why God creates the notion of loneliness, that a person who's alone feels lonely because they're not functioning the way they're supposed to. And in many ways, Noach was a tzaddik bidorotav, was reflective of who his generation was. His generation was rak ra. They were selfish. They stole from each other. They abused each other. They cared only about themselves. Noach was a tzaddik, but also a tzaddik who was focused on himself and unwilling or uninterested or unable to impact the generation in which he lived. And this, of course, is the difference between, as I mentioned, Noach and the Jewish heritage of what it means to be a gadol. The Zohar darshans pasuk in the Haftorah of this week's Parsha that refers to Mei Noach. It says that they're called Mei Noach the Mabul because they came at the fault of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it elaborates that this is the difference between Noach and Jewish tzaddikim. The Medrash tells us that Moshe and Noach have a conversation where Noach claims that he's greater than Moshe, as evidence in the fact that he was saved from the Dor HaMabul. And Moshe says, I'm greater than you because I was able to save other people. True greatness is when we can impact the other people around us. Balatanya writes that famous words that Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mecheni nami sifrecha. Mecheni is really the words Mei Noach. Noach did not impact the others. Moshe is willing to erase himself if God won't let him save others. And the Chatam Sofer explains that this is why Avraham was chosen to be the progenitor of the Jewish people. Hashem tells us in the Torah, in Parshat Vayera, that he must tell him about what he's going to do to Sodom. Ki yida'ativ laman asher yitzaved banav et beito acharav v'shamru derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat. Because I know that he is going to be someone who passes on a heritage of justice. And Rashi says yida'ativ means lashon chiba, a love. Why does God love Avraham? Because he's passing it on. Chatam Sofer explains that this is how Avraham was different than Noach. The concern for those around him, the concern for the future and the future heritage, the feeling that if he has something valuable, it's important that others recognize it, see it, live by it. This is Jewish heritage. This is what it means to be a descendant of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Moshe, as opposed to a descendant of Noach. And let's make sure to live up to that. Shabbat Shalom.